Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, I use little measuring cups because I find it's more accurate when you're doing smaller portions. So I've got a third of a cup measuring cup, and I just scoop it into my sugar bag, and I come out with a third of a cup of sugar. And I put it in the big bowl. And then, and what I do, as I cook, I put the things I've used over to the side so I know I've used them. Then I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of my yeast. If you have a packet of yeast, then we decided you were going to put the whole packet in, 2 of them. Okay. Then I turn on my hot water, 1 cup. Now, I will tell you, when I learned how to make challah the first time, what happened was they used to say you take your flour and you make a well in your flour and you put your ingredients in that well. And now this is like a dump cake, because you just whisk that up, and then I set the timer for 15 minutes. Just leave it be, don't keep turning, and it will start to look bubbly. You can see even now, there are little bubbles starting to form. It's going to be covered like that. As soon as you put the sugar and the warm water with it, it starts to proof. So, but while it's going off, what I do, in my big measuring cup, I put 3 cups of flour, or 3.5. Like I said, this is a dump challah, so it doesn't have to be exact. And if you have extra flour, then you use it when you're rolling out the tubes. See, I think I've done this before. That's exactly 3. Okay, what I do first is I measure out my oil in this little cup, and it's 1/4 of a cup. So
is it 3.5 cups flour or 3 cups flour?
I measure out about 3.5 cups, because what I do, if I don't get all of the flour in at first, then I put it on my counter when I'm rolling it out so it doesn't stick to the counter. So at the end, I use about 3.5 cups. I take 1 egg and I put it in the container with the oil. A 1/4 of a cup. I take my 1 teaspoon of salt. And sometimes I use regular salt and sometimes I use kosher salt. So right now I've got my oil, my egg, and my salt. And then in the recipe, it says you can put 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. I love vanilla. I put 1/2 teaspoon. Sometimes I put almond flavor because I love that even more than vanilla. But then I take my whip and I whip up the egg to break it up. All right, let me see. What I do, because I don't like to do dishes, what I do is I take this bowl and make my proofing in the big bowl. And then I measure out my flour, I measure out my oil, egg, and salt and stuff in a littler measuring cup. And then I dump. Now my timer hasn't gone off. It's been about 10 minutes. So we're gonna just dump the egg and salt, oil into that and mix it with the whisk. And then we're gonna start putting little bits of the flour into the bowl. And you can feel it starts to get thicker.
You dump a little bit of flour at a time?
Yeah, about a cup of flour at a time. So you do it in 3 or 4 increments. And today I dumped the whole, it was a little bit more than 3 cups. And when it gets like this, where it's clinging to the whisk and it's not really stirring. In case anybody wonders, I did wash my hands before I started, but I wash them again now so that they're a little damp. But then, whoops, I took it away to make it more convenient. I always cook right next to my sink because I have to wash a few times. Now, this recipe is special because you don't need it. You just put it, you just turn it and get the flour into it. Now, today, for some reason, the 3 cups is still pretty sticky. So I'm gonna put more flour in with it. And just mix it with your hand. Okay. It's all sticking together. And what I do next, after I wash my hands, is anyone feel intimidated yet? Okay, I take a plastic bag. Did you get yourself one too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I take the oil. I put about a tablespoon of oil in it. Whoops. And then I mush the bag around so that the sides of the bag are coated with the oil. And then I take the wad of dough. I roll it around in there to get oil on all the sides.
How much oil?
Okay. That is it for now. I set my timer again for an hour and let it rise. When we get back, it should be about twice as big as it is now. So do you see how this has expanded to, oh, I'm moving the wrong one.
That's
To
the one.
almost the size of the whole bag. And it's got air in it, so I'm not pushing on the dough. But now I'm going to take some more flour and I'm just going to put it on the counter. And then I'm going to take my dough and drop it on the flour. And it's oily because it's been in the bag. So I'm just going to play with it a little bit. And what I do, because I'm only one person, I cut it into 3 and I use the side of my hand to cut it. And that way it doesn't damage my dough. Then I do 3 more pieces, and those are going to be my strips. So I roll it out. And it has a tendency, because it's kind of elasticy, it's kind of has a tendency to pull back in. And don't worry about it, because you can stretch it back out when you're braiding it. And I pinch them together as I roll them. They're not necessary.
How long are they? Like a foot? How many?
Yeah, they're about a foot long.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, but if you were using the whole batch of dough, exactly a foot long. If you were using the whole batch, though, it would be longer or fatter, one of the two. Outside over middle, and I bring it gently. I I don't push the braid up against anything. If I get like right here, it wasn't a very good place in my thing. Honestly, I'm doing it, so that's a mitzvah. I don't worry about it. But when I get to the very end, then I take it, pinch it in, and kind of tuck it under so it stays. I'm gonna try something. I talked to a friend of mine who is an expert challah maker. And I said to her, I called her up Monday, I think.
Oh,
And I said, when you make a round challah, do you start in the middle and make it round? And she said, yes. And then I bring it up and I curl it and I do that. So I'm going to try making 2 little round challahs for Rosh Hashanah. Just ask me if I put the egg on before it rises or after it rises. And the answer is both. Because as it rises, it's going to split apart a little bit. And so I fill in the cracks. So what I do, and this is another thing that's my own thing, is some people put in a shelf full of water into it. I don't. Okay. And some people just use the white. I use the whole egg. And I use this paintbrush. I think I got it at the Dollar Tree. Or is it a, huh?
is that a Betty Crocker?
It's Betty Crocker.
Yeah, Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree. And make sure you get all the way down to the cookie sheet so your sides are pretty too. No. It's my, huh?
I could be a Betty Crocker.
Dying to do this part.
Thanks.
She's being my Vanna while I talk to you. You don't want to put it on too heavy because we don't want scrambled egg on top of it. But you do want to get like under here, all the way to the pan. Now we're going to let it rise again. The woman in the very first holiday, I've only been baking challah since the pandemic. So the very first, I think, week of pandemic, it was my first AJU class, and the woman who was making it did not let it rise again now. She said she put her egg on and then she started to preheat her oven. And when the oven was preheated to 350, she just put it in. I've found that I like it to rise a little bit. I think a little bit, but you missed over here. Okay. Okay, that's its first little wrap, and then we'll let it sit. The parchment paper is not a necessity, but then you don't have to scrub your cookie sheet. I let it sit about a half an hour more. And then I put it in the oven when my oven's at 350, I put it in the oven this way. I set my timer for 20 minutes. I take it out, turn it around, and put it in the opposite direction because the inside of the oven always bakes hotter. And so that way, when they come out, they're beautifully browned on both sides. And maybe even in the middle. What are you making? Oh, I have poppy seeds right here. Oh, okay. Ooh, save them for our Hummintaschen. We also do a Hummintaschen cooking group too. Going to do
Everything bagel.
everything bagel.
The Trader Joe's is like $1.99 for the same size jar.
I don't remember where I got it. I might have gotten it at the Dollar Tree. In case you think I'm there a lot. Okay. What's that?
Oh,
Oh,
Those are gorgeous.
That's
Wow, those are great. And what did you put? There was everything bagel on one and poppy
this is
on one.
everything bagel. This is poppy seed. This is sesame seed.
Okay.
That's
And
perfect.
easy. You know, that's the thing. It's not like making a well and putting this in and doing this and then having, like I said, having to sit there and fight with it. You know, it's just gets done.